54 years ago, you were in the front lines of trying to desegregate school housing at the University of Chicago. You were even arrested.
Don't tell anybody that. Injustice is something that I have always fought throughout my life.
Dr. King, in his last 2 years of life, talked about a poor people's campaign, organizing unions on behalf of poor workers, organizing against a war machine that was perpetuating violence in Vietnam. Bernie Sanders is the only politician who has consistently, for 50 years, taken that social justice platform into politics.
He won his first election by just 10 votes, a genuine upset. An independent beating both the Democrats and the Republicans.
The Board of Aldermen blocked all of his key appointments. They even blocked his secretary. Sanders actually figured out how to get around that obstruction and govern the city according to his values.
Bernie gave the city more daycare. That made him popular. He built low-income housing. That made him popular, too. He also brought in rent control, a land speculation tax, and tougher development laws.
Ordinary citizens feel very hopeless about the future. In Burlington, we have shown that you can stand up to the system, and at least you can win some good victories.
And I don't know about you, but I hail from a tradition that says that you will know the tree by the fruit that it bears, and Senator Bernie Sanders bears good fruit.
In case you don't know, and you haven't seen the latest polls, the American people hold the President of the United States in contempt. They hold this institution in contempt. They hold the Republican Party in contempt. They hold the Democratic Party in contempt.
Here's the thing. We are not going to win the world that we need. Not just the world that we want, but the world that we need if we are kind of sort of in favor of it. We are going to have to be on fire for it. And that is why I support Bernie Sanders to be the next president of the United States.
Do we believe, as the Canadians do, and as most industrialized nations do, that health care is a right of all people, or do we believe that quality health care should be a privilege of wealth?
They go back earlier, say to the Reagan years, about 70% of the population thought that national health care should be in the Constitution, but he's dismissed as radical and extremist.
Mr. Speaker, when multinational corporations throw American workers out on the street and move to China, where workers are paid 15 cents an hour, where slave labor exists, where basic democratic rights are ignored, where workers cannot organize free trade unions, that scenario may be good for the profit margins of the large corporations, but it is a disaster for American workers.
There is only one Senator Bernard Sanders, so let the record reflect that there is only one, just in case folks don't understand that being similar is not being the same. Come on, somebody.
The wealthiest 0.25% provide over 80% of campaign contributions. More and more millionaires are running for office, while the middle class and working families are voting less and less and participating in lower numbers.
And right now we have an opportunity to elect someone who is directly out of the philosophy of Kingian nonviolence. We can directly elect someone that cares about poor people, cares about women, gay, black rights, cares about lives that don't look like his. And this opportunity in history is not going to come in another 20 years.
Many of us believe that fight against terrorism must be waged in a way that does not undermine the basic constitutional rights and protections that have made us a great and free country.
And I know sometimes people talk about the angry black woman, but I'm going to tell you something. If you ain't mad as a mofo about what's going on here, something's wrong with you.
The question, Mr. Speaker, is not whether we like Saddam Hussein or not. The question is whether he represents an imminent threat to the American people and whether a unilateral American invasion of Iraq will do more harm than good.
They were fearless.
Yes.
These were people prepared to stand up to anybody.
Yes.
And they didn't care about the consequence for themselves or even political consequence. They were driven by a higher calling. Do you see that anymore in modern leaders?
No, I do not. They have lost moral compass. And it is the absence of that moral vision and the absence of that moral courage that I think we suffer from. I've endorsed Bernie Sanders. I think he represents opportunity. I think he represents a moral imperative. I think he represents a certain kind of truth that's not often evidenced in the course of politics. I would suggest that to those of you who have not yet made up your minds, or maybe even some of you who have made up your minds, to maybe consider and reconsider what it is that Bernie Sanders offers.
I could sit here and tell you why Bernie's Green New Deal plan is better than all the other candidates, and it is by far, but that is not even the real reason why I support Bernie for president. I support Bernie because there's no point in having a good Green New Deal plan if you're not building the movement to win it.
There was only one person who stood up to the establishment, and his name is Bernard Sanders.
We're talking about somebody who is for real.
If you want a government that represents all of the people and not just a few, come on board the political revolution.
I paid $1,000. You know, that's still less than what I paid a month in the United States.
Thank you for everything you've done these last few years. You've helped to reset our political discourse, and are demanding that we center our politics around justice and equity.
We're going to elect somebody who understands that there are disparities within the disparity, and that if you are black, if you are brown, if you are indigenous, and if you are poor, this system is rigged and it is rotten to the core, and we're going to unrig it.
All of us are in it together. From indigenous to white, we're all in it together.
People always say, oh, you're being too vocal. I don't feel I'm being vocal enough. We are not being vocal enough.
We're looking for a serious critique of Wall Street, not hate rich folk, but hate greed, greed, greed.
If nothing fundamentally changes for multi-millionaires and billionaires, then nothing fundamentally changes for you and you and you and you.
Who has the power in this country? How do we democratize all of our institutions? How do we give working people power over their own lives?
Louder! Yeah, we gotta get louder. How many kids are gonna have to make this sacrifice and die?
The only way we transform America is when millions of people together stand up and fight back.
And if you look at the younger voters, the people who will shape the future, they were overwhelmingly anti-Trump and even more overwhelmingly pro-Sanders. That's